Happy Podcast Ideas, Episode 0, The Happy Pilot.
Okay.
My name's Levi. I'm 21. I'm from small town Saskatchewan, and my big idea after graduating high school was to go into anatomy and cell biology with the University of Saskatchewan. But then I was like, second year, hadn't declared my major yet, so I was like, biochemistry sounds more fun than anatomy and cell biology, so I went into biochemistry. I'm in my third year now, and a few of my interests / hobbies are like spoon carving, and I also like to rock climb and work out and play video games, and I don't like to do my schoolwork at all, like ever.
That's fair. That really sounded like you read it off a script, but we're going to roll with it.
I literally don't have it written on my script.
Oh. So my name's Steven. I'm 20 years old, third year in kinesiology from a small town, Saskatchewan too. So my interests are sports, exercise, health, music, art. And the funny thing about music is that I have a guitar that I used to play, but I haven't touched that in like 6 months.
Oops. Same with my clarinet. I haven't touched my clarinet in like over a year, and I'm so mad about that.
I just want to start by saying that we aren't medical professionals. We do use credible information and resources, but at the end of the day, we can't diagnose anyone.
Well, like, our advice or anything that we're talking about here shouldn't be taken as medical advice in any way, because we are not medical professionals. We're just simply two students sharing stories, talking.
Yeah, but hopefully we get to the point once COVID is over that we can have guests come onto this podcast.
Yeah, that's the dream.
Right? Yeah. Our aim is to share personal stories and provide resources and facts that help to support others and break the stigma and stereotypes. So we want to get away from that laundry list of symptoms. You know, you hear the same things about ADHD, anxiety, depression. Not that they aren't significant, those symptoms, but we kind of want to humanize them, because you hear them on these long lists and you don't really think, like, what does that look like? So hopefully that's what we can do with this podcast.
Yeah. We want to put individualism into each of the symptoms, like explain how certain things affect our daily lives and be able to share our personal stories on this. So say someone is struggling with these symptoms in their lives and they didn't realize that these symptoms were caused by their mental illness and weren't just how they were. That's how I like to describe my symptoms. It's not an excuse, but it is an explanation. Like, I can be held accountable for my actions, and I should be held accountable for my actions, and I should do a lot of things and everything like that. But the reason I don't is because of my ADHD, but that's not excusing it, you know?
Yeah, right. Okay, so speaking of excuses, what I wanted to talk about today is
Don't call me out.
Routine and making excuses for not doing work right now, maybe during COVID, or just not being in a routine. So I know that you said you were struggling with this earlier before we started recording. So what's your take on routine, Levi?
Routines are very powerful things. Humans are creatures of habit, you know? Everyone says that, and it's true. A good routine will make you more productive, will better your life in many ways. You know, like, I have a bedtime routine. Usually I end my day by sitting playing video games for 6 or 7 hours. Don't call me out on that. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Anyways, as soon as I'm done, I get up, get a drink of water, brush my teeth, go get another drink of water. Then I double check that my girlfriend has shut her plants off and that smelly wax thing is off.
Right.
The lights are off and that the door is locked. And then I go to bed.
Yeah, that's
basically I can fall asleep in like 5 minutes, because it sets my brain up to be like, okay, it's sleep time now. Let's go to bed.
Yeah, that is absolutely the most specific routine I've ever heard. And that uh,
Well, like the water can come before or after. Like that's
okay, yeah,
It's
the water is
exactly
it's integral.
that, you know?
It's a very important
The
part
water
of the
is
routine.
integral, though.
Okay. But anyway, because of COVID, how has that affected things really? Like, is this a new routine that you've implemented, or is that just something that you're going with right now?
I mean, I sort of had one last year this time because of COVID, you know? We
Yeah.
had to transition to all online, and I sort of made a routine. And then, like, went tree planting this summer, and then came back, had zero routine, made a new one. Went back home for Christmas, destroyed my routine, and now I'm failing at implementing a new one.
Yep, that is exactly my experience too, minus like anything that you just said. I never went tree planting in the summer, but when COVID happened, I was also really struggling with a routine. I was going to bed at like 5 a.m., getting up at 2 p.m. That was sort of my routine for a little bit. I found it really hard to do things, but come fall term last semester, I was into this little bit of a routine, and now that that's over, it's winter term. I'm still trying to do the same stuff, but it's not working at all now. So I basically just can't do anything.
Yeah.
And
Same.
once we get into these routines, like Levi was talking about with his water thing, I didn't really understand it, but it's how he goes to bed. Once we get into these routines, it just makes life easier for us. Like, I know when I'm in a good routine, I can wake up, go to bed at a reasonable time, and I have these like time slots. So my brain knows that, oh, it's school time, or I should eat food right now. And that's another discussion,
Yeah.
is that you
It's
should
food,
remember
yeah.
to eat food, put that into your routine. So do you like usually plan out your days because like we have to have routines with ADHD?
Yes and no, I would say. Like, you see my whiteboard here? It has a bunch of stuff on it right now that I haven't done yet. And
Naturally, yeah.
anyways, so basically, now that classes have been going on a month or so, month and a half, whatever, I know what's going to be released in a week. And so I write everything that I have in that week down on my whiteboard. And then I sort of, every day I look at it, I'm like, oh, well, I have a math lab on Tuesday, and it's Monday today. So I should finish my math lectures from last week that I didn't manage to finish today, you know? So
Right.
and then I'm like, oh, well, I'm behind in this class the most, I'm behind in this class the most. Or I should really get this done before my midterms in X amount of time, you know? So, like, every day I set myself a list of tasks, generally way too much to get done in a day,
Right.
because I overschedule myself. But, yeah, that's sort of my day-to-day routine. Like, I wake up, eat breakfast, sometimes I forget.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Have a coffee, write that down, and then I get to work around 9 or 10 usually.
Right. I know one of the things that you mentioned there is that you will, I forgot how you put it, but you basically bite off more than you can chew
Yeah.
when you start one of these
I
routines.
overbook myself a lot.
And I can definitely say I relate to that too, because I know, like, I haven't really been consistent with schoolwork, even though I do have synchronous classes.
Same
Don't
here.
tell my professors. I haven't really been consistent with schoolwork. Like, I'm a little behind here and there. I have a day planner, right? And with that day planner, I'll start my day off at, say, like 8 a.m., which, no, that's a lie. He's looking at me from across the room. I start my day at like 10 a.m., maybe 12 p.m. if I went to bed at like 3, which isn't unrealistic for me right now.
True. Same.
But
Oops.
anyway, when I'm up at 10 a.m., not 8 a.m., I like plan out my whole day, right? So I'm like, okay, 10 to 12, that's school time. And then if I remember, I'll have lunch from 12 to 1. And then, yeah, I'll go for like a little walk and, yeah, do school for a little bit after that. Maybe go to the gym. But I haven't really been consistent with that routine in particular. I had that in fall term, but now that it's winter term, I haven't really been having a routine. So because of that, I'm behind in not just my schoolwork, but like my adult life. My groceries right now, what I'm eating is microwave dinners and like these pre-made vegetable things. Yeah.
You have to have your vegetables.
You have to have your vegetables.
No, I was talking you specifically.
Okay,
I always say I don't eat enough vegetables.
Yeah, you don't. But anyway, I broke my routine, and that made it really hard for me to get my work done. So now, when I'm scheduling things, I know that I'll overschedule, as Levi was talking about. Like, I will plan out a day that is just impossible. Like, I'm trying to do schoolwork for like 12 hours, but fit in like a meal prep, going to the gym, and getting groceries. But then the funny thing is, I actually don't get any of that done.
Yeah.
I usually just end up like playing Apex Legends or something.
That's another big thing with me. If I'm going through my normal daily routine of doing schoolwork and anything, and I don't manage to get something done in the time I wanted to finish it, it ruins my day. Like, literally ruins my day. I'm like, wow, I'm a failure. I suck at school. I can't do this. So I guess I'll just stop and, like give up and play video games or go lay in bed and cry or something.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense too, though. When I make these day schedules, right, they're like hard time blocks that I try to follow. So it's like school from 10 a.m. to 12. So if I go over that, even by like 5 minutes, I'm like, it's 12:05 right now. I have no idea what's going on. I am pissed. I won't be able to follow this routine.
Yeah.
So I either end up doing schoolwork in the afternoon, or I just don't at all and get frustrated.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel a lot of people are able to, reschedule their routines. They're like, oh, well, this actually took me 2 hours, not the hour I thought it was going to take. So I'll just push this all back. But if that happens to me, I'm like, oh, God, I can't do this. I give up.
Of course. Like, we know with ADHD, there's problems with executive function. So, like, that's showing itself in us.
Yeah.
Where it's time blindness, obviously.
A lot.
Prioritizing, especially.
Yeah. Working memory, too.
Yeah, that's really important. But I think the time blindness and the prioritizing is what really is hurt when we don't have a routine.
Yeah. Especially because time blindness doesn't only affect, like, our view of passing time. Like, I can do something for 2 seconds and it's actually been 4 hours. Oops. Like, I get that a lot of people get that, but this is like every day, single day for every single task that I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or it's the opposite of that, and it's been 2 minutes, but it felt like 6 hours, like watching my lectures some days, I'm like, oh my God, it has to, like, I have to be halfway done this video by now. I've taken like 1,000 notes. I've friggin' just done everything here, and it's been 13 minutes and 48 seconds in my lecture, like.
Yeah.
Another thing, this is what I was leading up to, is that our time blindness affects how long we think a task will take.
Mm-hmm.
I know that watching a 1 hour lecture will take 1 hour,
Wow.
Yes, that's what I mean. Actually, just watching it, not watching it, taking notes, making sure I understand the content. That's going to take probably 2 to 3 hours.
Or like actually listening to the
lecture.
Or
actually listening. Yeah.
When you start not paying attention, or when you stop paying attention.
And that's partially what leads to overbooking. Like, I'm like, yeah, that's an hour. That's an hour. That's an hour. But in reality, that's 2 hours. That's an hour and a half, and that's 3 hours. So it's like, okay, I finished 3 of my tasks today out of the 6 I wanted to do. And it's like, I still did 7 hours of schoolwork, but I wanted to do, in reality, 12 or 15 or something. And that's just ridiculous.
You did 7 hours of schoolwork when you expected it to take like 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
Or even throughout the day, I'm really bad for this too. I'll say I'm taking maybe a 15-minute break, but that turns into 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
That definitely shows itself in me too when I'm working on my schedules is that time blindness, it affects like every part of your life. I like the classic example of always showing up to things late or showing up so early because you always showed up late.
That's what I do.
Yeah, that's what I started doing too. Like I'll show up a half hour or an hour before appointments because I was like chronically late or missed them because I forgot.
Mm-hmm. And it's just awkward sitting there, nothing to do for half an hour.
But it's really weird how time works for us, right? Because like you said, something like school or something that you don't want to do, for me that's cooking, and that's why I'm having microwave dinners right now. Mm-hmm. Things that we don't want to do, they can take maybe 10 minutes, but to us it feels like hours, and the things that take hours can just feel like minutes to us. Mm-hmm. And that's really interesting, to say the least. Building on that concept, though, of misjudging the time that things take, for me, when I was in my routine, I could actually like see how long classes would take, right? Like I wouldn't actually see it, but the routine was built in a way that I couldn't have this perfectionist routine where I spent 12 hours doing school every day. Like there was a good balance. You know, I had time in the evening to hang out with friends or just do my own thing, like video games. But having that routine makes you start to realize how long things actually take. I know there's a few things you can do which help when you're studying or doing things like setting timers. What is that, like the 15 minutes of work and 5 minutes break,
something like that?
Yeah,
it all depends on the person too.
Yeah.
Also, if I do that, I'll change that per class. Like I know I'm way more interested in my advanced cell biology class than my geology class. So like I'll do 10 minutes of work with a 3-minute break for my geology class to get those breaks more frequently. And for my advanced cell biology class, I'll do half an hour of work and a 5-minute break, you know?
Right. The geologists are shaking their fists at you.
I just really aren't. I'm not interested in minerals.
I know. That definitely makes sense, though. Like, if we're interested in something, we can just focus on it for like hours and hours, what feels like minutes to us. But if we hate doing something or uninterested, that is the worst thing to do. And the thing about a routine is it kind of integrates it in a way that, you know, you don't have to not really force yourself to do it, but
it's just like, okay, I've done this every single day. I can do it today as well.
It helps you get over that initial starting point, which is a challenge with ADHD.
The wall of awful.
Yeah.
Another thing about routines and what's sort of ruined my routine is actually joining Peer Health, because it's not the amount of work or anything. I'm okay with that. It's the meetings. And it's not the meetings themselves. The meetings are great content and everything. It's okay, I have a meeting at 3 o'clock today, right? I have to be at this meeting at 3 o'clock. And so I spend my morning working, and then it hits 1 o'clock, and it's like, oh my God, my meeting's soon. I have to prepare for this. And I sit there in this weird stasis of anxiety and over-preparation for this meeting that's happening in 2 hours, when in reality, all I'd need to do is flip to a fresh page in my binder here and join a WebEx meeting.
No, that makes sense too, because I experienced that with my appointments, where it's like, you know that you have an appointment in a couple hours, but you aren't going to be able to do anything because you have an appointment in a couple hours.
Yeah, exactly.
All you're going to be thinking about is doing that thing. You won't be able to shift your focus from school to whatever. So definitely when things pop up sort of in your life, it makes having a routine more challenging. But having a routine that can accommodate for those things might be the solution, which I'm gonna be forthright and say I haven't figured out how to do that.
Yeah, same. Like I've made many attempts to make different routines, some very good, some very bad, and I've implemented those or tried to implement them in my life, and the implementation is obviously the hardest thing because it's something new, it's something different, it's change, you know?
Yeah.
Like everyone's gonna struggle with it, but I've found they don't work. Like, a lot of my routines are just generated naturally through my own actions, like, so if I'm regularly doing my classes from, say, 8 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, then I will do school in that time. But outside of that time, it is very much a struggle to make myself do anything
Right.
school related. Same as in the evenings, I've developed a routine of playing video games. So after 7 o'clock, there's no hope of me doing work. Like, I know this now. So everything that I have to do in a day, I have to plan before 7 o'clock at night, because once it hits that time, I don't want to do anything else,
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like recognizing when your brain wants to do something and when your brain doesn't want to do
and
something.
recognizing the routines that you've made unconsciously in your life. Like, it's totally fine. Like, you don't have to fully structure your day, like write it down all on paper. Or you don't have to exactly plan a routine, like this time to this time, or around here, or anything like, you know what I'm saying here?
So recently we attended this presentation put on by Peer Health. The presenter was Devin Drexley. He's a mental health nurse at University of Saskatchewan, and he did this presentation on sleep. One of the things I found interesting was that people with ADHD have shifted circadian rhythm, right? So we go to bed later and we wake up later than other people. You said that you get up at 7 a.m. and start your day at 8 a.m.
If I'm in my routine, I get up 6:30. That hasn't been happening recently. Start my day 8 o'clock,
Okay, so I just wanted to tie in that conversation with circadian rhythm. Although it might not be acceptable by society, it's an explanation of why I'm getting up at 10 a.m. and going to bed at 2 a.m. That feels natural for me. That works, even though I say I'm not doing all the schoolwork I want to do. Despite this idea of us, having that perfect routine and doing things perfectly, school, life, whatever, it definitely looks different for us, because he starts his days earlier, but I start my days a lot later. But we still not get the same amount of work done, but do what we both need to do.
Yeah.
So
that actually ties into my blog post that I wanted to post on the Peer Health page. There is about how procrastination is okay with anything really, but especially with ADHD. If you have an exam coming up this week, you don't need to do your other work. You can catch up on it. If you're able to catch up on it, studying for your exam is far more important, especially because, at least for me, I find it very difficult to study. I have to prepare myself because I've created a study routine that comes into effect,
Yeah.
So I have to prepare myself and implement this new routine to me, well, new to this time to me, new routine to study for something,
So, those points about scheduling school and that being different makes sense, but I think one of the things that we're kind of touching on here is that we have problems prioritizing, going back to that executive function. So what this looks like when we have this list of things we need to do in front of us, we see that list, but nothing really stands out. It's this one task is just as important as the other task, but it could be watching a lecture versus studying for the midterm tomorrow.
Literally.
And if you have it so that you want to watch the lecture first, then you might watch the lecture first, but then you're going to be too exhausted to study for the midterm. So your priorities are out of whack here, but you don't really see that, and you just try to push through, but you're mentally exhausted, and you end up just not studying for that midterm. Whereas recognizing these things that you want to prioritize and kind of integrate into your routine are very important. And that's why people with ADHD, I find it funny because I know that I can't work without a routine, but I hate having a routine.
Yeah.
Because then it gets more complicated. I don't have this flexibility to where I can do anything I want. Like I can do all these tasks that I want to do. But again, without it, I'm not going to do the things that I need to. Like I'm going to prioritize the things that are easy, but the things that are difficult to me, like cooking, eating, watching these lectures, I'm not going to get those done because they're kind of at like the bottom of the list of priorities. So I'll do the fun stuff, like going to the gym or hang out with friends. But then these other things fall to the wayside when I don't have a routine.
Routines are the lifeblood of ADHD people, you know, like without a routine, you are not going to be as productive as you want to be, or even productive at all some days. Especially, like, I find myself, if I'm not keeping to my routine, or if I didn't manage to, I'm unable to do anything. But with a routine, you also might not do well, you know? Like,
Yeah.
you can't expect a routine to solve everything. Like, I had a decent routine for all of, like, last term, and, you know, I did well in my classes. I did very well, actually, and I was pretty proud of myself for that. But I still, like, bombed a test and, like, got 50s, and it's like, well, that really sucks. I tried really hard to do this, and I feel it's like I failed. Everything's gonna happen, you know? Like, routines will help you complete whatever you need to do, but they aren't the be-all, end-all, you know?
No, yeah, because you can't perfectly follow it, and it isn't going to make you have that perfect life. Like, ideally, it all works out, that routine that you set, but some days it doesn't. And I think the takeaway here, though, is that if you are going to start a routine, you should have it be adaptable, and definitely don't beat yourself up if it doesn't work. Because even last term, when things were going good, I had so many routines that made no sense and didn't work. Well, not routines
what about
per
your
se,
second
but
year
scheduling.
routine, man?
Okay, yeah, second year was brutal because I was trying to transfer into kinesiology from arts and science. I think my average was 62.5 or something. Not the greatest, but I had to get it up to a 74 in one term. So I calculated what my average needed to be, and that was a 92. So I thought, okay, I might be able to do this. So I spent literally all my time, like 10, 12 hours a day, just doing school. Like, sure, I finished that term with a 94 average, but I was absolutely miserable doing it. So yeah, that just goes back to that idea of prioritizing things, because, you know, as challenging as it is, there needs to be that balance between your health, your hobbies, and just everything. And while that might seem overwhelming, I just want to say that it's okay if you mess up your routines, or it's okay if it doesn't make sense yet. It's okay if you can't prioritize yet. But when you start to try and make sense of these things and they start working for you, it's a huge improvement.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I think we covered the structure of our podcast pretty well, and we went pretty in depth there about routines and that idea of a perfect routine. And, you know, so we're going to provide you with some resources, some information in the description of this. And I want to end this by saying, if you are struggling with your mental health or illnesses, please contact a medical professional. Again, we are not medical professionals. We're students sharing our story. And we use the Student Wellness Center. And another great resource is the Peer Health group with USask. You can check them out for workshops, blog posts, seminars, and other things. So I'm going to link that in the description too.
Yeah, that's pretty much everything.
Okay, well, hopefully you guys like this. See ya.